Welcome back. In this video, we are going to explore how the data grid is being used in Material UI. And this video was requested by some of you that I should make a video how this API or this component is being used. So let's get started. And this is what you are going to build by the end of this video, and you're going to use Rare API data in a Rare World application. So before we get started, if you're starting from this point, I want to tell you that this series is part of the Material UI 5 tutorial series, and as we proceed on, we are using the skills you've learned to build this application. And in the previous video, we implemented the drawer for responsive design. So as you can see here, I can toggle and that. So we are going to use this project to explore how the data grid API is being used. So let's get started. So first thing first, let me show you where the component lies and how to use. So if you go to materialui.com and let's search for DataGrid. Alright, so DataGrid, click on that, and then let's see some documentation. And you need to install this package separately. So the DataGrid and the grid are different. Don't be confused with these two. We have a grid component to implement responsive layout, as we have explained before, to build this layout. And we have DataGrid to display data in a table form. So what is the difference between a data grid and a table? So if you search for table component here, you could see it's also display data in a table form, right? So the difference is that the table display data in a simple way, right? And data grid is for advanced displaying. And if you read the documentation, it says that the data grid is to display data that are huge, right? Meaning if you have a large list of data that you are displaying, the data grid is ideal for you. And it also has some, by default, some functionalities like this. So the final one, you can see that we can even select some of them, right? And you can see we have the number of rows that have been selected, and you also have the pagination automatically given to you if your record is more than certain page that you want to navigate in. And for each of these rows, we also have another functionality like sorting, like ascending and descending order. And you can also click on this one for filtering. So let me show you what I mean when I refresh this application, and let's click on that, on the icon here. You can see we have on sort. By default it has been sorted, and we can filter and we can hide some field, right? So you see you can hide some field as well. So let's do the filtering. So for example, if you want to filter the name with the email that contains a certain value, let's say it contains, I want to filter the email field that contains, let's say, Yesina or whatever. And you see that we have one record, that is it. And you can also filter by username, and you can use any of these operators like contains, and it's really good, awesome tool to get your hands dirty on. So you can also hide certain fields. So let me refresh the application again, and you can also hide certain field. We can say show column, and you can show, hey, I don't want this one, I don't want this one, I want only the email field for easy for what analyzing. You see that I will have the email field. So the data grid table is really awesome, and it makes our life easier in some ways. So without much talking, let's go to the documentation and see how we are going to play around with it, right? So first of all, we need to install this package, and we have two types of the data grid, right? So as we proceed, I will be telling you the differences. One is a commercial one, and one is a free community license. So we're going to use the community version called DataGrid. So let's quickly install the package. So for this one, if you don't have Material UI being installed, you need to install this one first, and then you come here and install this package too. So I prefer to use yarn. So I go to my terminal here and shut down my server and paste the command, and then it will be installed for me automatically for me. So let me rearrange my desktop well, and let's scroll down. So the quick start, as you can see, the first thing you need to take note is about the row, right? You need to construct your row by yourself, and then the column. And all what you need, this is a column and this is rows. So the rows are from where? From left to right. So if you look at this one, let me refresh this one. You could see that the items from here are called the rows. They're from left to right, and we have the columns, right? So if you check it out, you have to construct your rows and columns by yourself, and this is how they did it. So I can see that this documentation is not all that user friendly, because for this one they use TypeScript for that, and we are using JavaScript. So I'm going to show you how you're going to use it. And construct your columns, and columns are from where? From top to bottom. So for this one, the columns are the name from top to bottom, email, username, website, phone, and company. So let's come back again into documentation, and you can see we have the data grid, and we have the grid rows pro and grid column. Don't worry about that. And after all, you need to run the component and pass in your rows and column, and you have something like this. So this one at the first glance looks that scary, not that user friendly. So let me show you how it's being used. Okay, so let's go back to code, and like I said, this component, you need to play around with it. And because this component is not going to be the final part of our project that we are building, so let's place it here and call this one DataGrid MUI. I don't want to conflict with the actual name, that's why I'm adding the name. So let me scaffold the component here, and for the meantime, let's just add the text and call this one DataGrid. And let's go ahead and display this component. So inside the app component, we see we have this one that we play around. So let's import the DataGrid MUI. And for the meantime, let's comment everything from here, and then let's display the DataGrid component MUI. So when I save this, let's see what we have. Let's refresh the application. Oh, I have to restart my server after I install the package. So let me restart the server. Alright, so let's have some patience. After the package being installed, it's asking me I should run on different port because I have an application that is running on port 3000, so I have to use this one, 3001. So I'll say yes, and then it's going to open for me, and there we go. So let me show you how you're going to do it in a simple way, right? So first thing first, let's import. Let me see. Yeah, it has finished. So first thing, let's come here and then import the data grid. And remember, the data grid is not from Material UI Core, but different source. So is data grid. All right. Okay, let me import it well. So import from at MUI/x-DataGrid, and here I have access to my data grid. Perfect. So let me lay down the steps here. So we are going to do this one in two ways. One, just use a static data, and secondly, show you how you can use some real API fetch to display it in a table. All right. So here, first step is that let's construct your rows, right? And then first step, let's do the column first. Okay, the columns first. So here the columns are what? In a table, we call this one table header. All right, table header, like that. And then the second step, two, are going to be the rows, right? So the rows here are going to be what? The rows are going to be the actual data, rather the table body, right? So now that we have this, let's go ahead and then create the columns. So the columns are what we need to be displayed here. The file name is here. I have name, email, username, and website. So for now, let's make it very simple. Alright, so let's go ahead and then create the columns. So the columns are the table headers, right? So for this one, let's have a variable cons, and let's call this one columns, and it's going to be an array because I want to have 2 or 3 headers for my table. So here, first of all, you need to provide a key property that is from the component. You need to provide as called header name, right? As for header name, this is a must, and this header name going to be the name of the header going to appear on the header, right? The table header. So for this one, let's call this one students. Cool, right? And here you can provide the width of the header, so you can provide an absolute value, let's say 200 pixels, like that. So now I have the first one as what? The student, and if you want to have, let's say, the score of the student, copy this one and then change the header name here to where? To score, right? So let's provide these 2 things here. Or last one, let's provide the last one, the header, as after score, let's give this one as age, right? Cool. So now I have my headers called columns. So next one going to be the rows. The rows are the actual data, right? So the rows are what? The actual data, and the rows are from where? From left to right, right? So here let's construct columns, and let's call this one rows. Also going to be an array, and here each one represents one data record, one record here. So this one you need to pass in all the values from here, right? So let's go ahead and then do that. Cool. So for this one, for the rows, first of all, for the student name, right? For the student name and the age are the values here, right? So the first thing is that you need to provide the student name. And before we can do that, let's finish up this one because we are going to bind the columns and the rows. So for each column right here, you need to provide a field, right? A field here, like that. And this field here is going to map to the rows here. If you get confused, don't worry, let's provide it as you proceed. You know how it means. So let's say student name here, right? So here, the student name here is a value here, but inside the rows it becomes what? The property name. And here you can provide the student name as what? Let's call the first student as Emmanuel, right? Cool. So now the field name becomes a value that represents this student's name here. All right. So the next one, also let's provide a field name for each, like that. A field name, and then comma here, and let's call this one student score. All right. And as you can guess, the next one going to be the field name, going to be student age. All right. So cool. We are done with the columns. So provide a field name. The field name going to be the property for the rows. So this one going to hold the values for this. So the field name is a property name going to hold the value of the score. So now I have my student name here that holds a student name as what? As Emmanuel. So the next one I have what? The student score. So here becomes what? Student score. Student score. Student score. Now the score, let's give this one, let's say 90%. And then the next field here is student age. Student age, let's call this one 27. And we are done with it. We have finished with it. So the last thing is that we need to use the component and pass in those values, right? So let's scroll down here and then provide the data grid, right? So let's provide some inline styling here for this div, and let's call this one the weight to be 100%. and let's provide width of 100%, no height. The height might be automatically being adjusted based on the value. So here let's bring in the data grid, right, and provide it as unsafe closing, and let's have some space to pass in the props. So the first prop important are called the rows, and the rows here, it takes the rows, and then you can guess columns also takes what? The columns above here. Cool. So when you save this, the columns here, why, yeah, this one, columns like this. So when you save this, let's check it out. Let's refresh the application. All right. Okay. So the last thing you need to finish up is that for each of the rows, you need to provide an ID, right? So for each of this row, provide an ID. The ID is going to help the component for optimization, right? So as soon as you click on one row, the component will know that yes, you have clicked on this. If you look at this one, the final one, you can see that when you make selection, when you click on this one, the ID determines which one has been clicked. So if you refuse to provide, you're going to have that error. So when you provide the ID, now let's see. There we go. We have it, and automatically we have as that. You see, I can now filter it, sorting, and provide this one. I can click on this one, giving to us automatically for us. That is pretty easy, right? So you can go ahead and add more value here, right? Paste everything here many times, and you can change. Make sure you change the ID, not conflict with this one and whatever, I think, and you can change the name too. It's okay for now, but let's check it out now. There we go, and as you can see, we have the pagination as that. All right, so cool. That is easy to implement. So now let's talk about the rare use cases. In rare cases, you need to fetch some API from external source and then display it. So the logic here is that, look at the pattern here. Always, you need to assume if you are fetching a request from, let's say, JSON placeholder, you need to restructure the result and take the properties you want to display and construct exactly as this, right? As this. So let's go ahead and make a request to JSON placeholder. So if you don't know, JSON placeholder is some simple API request that can help us to make some requests to fetch some dummy data. So if you go to JSON placeholder, and then that is the name, JSON placeholder.typecode.com, and scroll down, and let's make use of the users. So scroll down, we have users that returns 10 users, and you want to display this one inside our application, right? Cool. So let's copy the link here, and then let's go back to the application and make a request and show you how you can reformat that one. And then so here, because I want to manage state, I need to bring in use state here and use effect for fetching the request. Use effect. Cool. So now inside this one, let's keep track of the state. Yeah, so here, let me call this one use state here, and then let me provide called users, and then for now it's going to be an empty array and set users. So let me create a function to fetch the user. So const fetch data is equal to an array function, and in here I'm going to use fetch. So const, and let me say call this one response is equal to await, and let's use fetch for this, the built-in HTTP client, and let me paste in the API from the JSON placeholder. Cool. So when I get the response back, next is I need to convert or I can put them in try and catch in case there's an error. So it's okay, just for trying purposes. Okay, let me do it well. So let me put this one into try and catch in case there's some error that goes. So for this one, I'm not going to keep track of the errors. I want to show you how you can restructure the response coming from API to your project. So here, if you get the response back, you need to convert it to JSON, right? That is why I don't like fetch. Axios will do it for you automatically. So here, let's call this one data, and then the response that came back, you need to append .json to convert everything to JSON data, right? And here I can console log the data here, console.log. Let me log the data here, and let me call this one data. And then when I get the response back, I want to fill up my state. So here, set users, then I have access to the data that is coming back. Cool. So now let's call this function using use effect, right? So this use effect here as a callback, and then the second argument here going to be an array, the dependencies. So here let's pass in the users. So for now it's okay, and then let's call the fetch data as that. And because I'm using await, I need to mark my function as an async. Perfect. So with this, when we go back to the application, where is it? This one, and let's check the console, and you can see that it is promised. Yes, you need to handle that. So when we are converting everything to JSON, you need to await that one too. That is why we are getting that error. So we save this one, and now there we go. So let's refresh again, and now we see that we have the response. So looking at this structure here, we need to, if we want to provide the values, the table header, email, ID, and this one. For example, we don't need much of this data. Let's say we want the email, ID, and name. So we need to, reformat this data and get what you want and construct your response, your data exactly as this. So here, the columns are fixed. So in our purpose for now, we can comment everything and show you, I'm going to show how we're going to do with this one. So in our case right now, we have all these properties coming back, and let's say that we want the email, name, and phone. So we can use reduce function to reduce the result coming back, right? So here, if you fill up the users, on the users, we have all the values. So we can use map to map through those data, and then we can get the properties we want. So for meantime, let's comment this one out. Let's comment the rows out, because these rows are the actual data, right? So for now, let's say the result that came back, we want the name, right? So here, let's provide the name, and the next header going to be the email, and then let's provide phone number as that. So here, you can also provide the same name as a field, right? To the name here, going to be the name, email here, email, phone here, phone here. So now, instead of typing this one dynamically, we want to get this one from the API. Cool. So looking at our header, we are requesting for three things: the name, and the email, and then the phone, right? So if you get back the users here, we can say, let me comment here and say that trim the data and grab what we want. Perfect. Okay, so here, let me call this one const trim, and it's equal to the users. So always I'm going to check if there's data in the users. So instead of using users and users dot length, right, it's greater than 1, then do that. I'm going to use what is called this new version of ESS. We call it optional chaining, right? I'm going to use the question mark. So instead of using the AND operator, I'm going to use the question mark to check the data in the users. If that's the case, then I can use map, and then inside of that I have the user, and I can return a new object here, right? To this new object, now I want, looking at the result coming back, okay, it's no more. So if you console log this one, we have, according to our structure here, okay, let me bring it back so that we can see the results in the console. So perfect. As you can see here, we have email, name, and phone. That's what I want to return, right? And leave the rest over there. So here we have the name. The name here coming from user, and I want to check if there's user, then grab the name, right? So for this one, we can make it as user and user.name, the same thing, but this optional chaining make it pretty easy. .name, and then the next property is called let me see what we did for, call the email and phone. Okay, so email and as that, and then phone as also as that. So now instead of the rows here, now I have my row data here, right? So let me call this one row data, so that we more row data here. Okay, so here I cannot pass in the row data here, and now check it out. Moment of truth. Well, okay, where do I have DataGrid requires all rows to have unique ID. Oh, sorry, like I said, so we need to add the ID to this, and this one ID user.id. That is it, and check it out. There we go. You see, now we have this email and phone. So it means that I'm not populating the email value. So let's see, is it email here? And let's look at the, we have, oh, so provide email here, sorry, and that is it. Cool, you see that we have that, and automatically we also have this one. Okay, so all right, so if you can, we can add more property to that, and we can provide some more props to this, right? So don't worry about how this one, it can be pushed down here. I think the way you structured this one, so don't worry about that. Pointing about the functionality here, the final one, this is what we have. So here the next one is, I'm going to show you some props that we can pass in, right? So next one here, after we pass in all the things we need, I'm going to add more properties to that. And here, let's say we need the website. I don't want to waste my time here, so I'm going to add the website company in here as that. I want to get it from the response. So here I want to add 3 more field here into that. So 3 more field. The names are now, this is now useless. Which one? This one. So let me remove this one because I'm getting the response from the data. So here I also provide company. I want to keep track of the company header here, and here company here gonna be company as that, and then the header gonna be company, and then the width, let me give it as 200, and then I also need the address. Let me see, yeah, the phone. I have phone, the company, and then the website. So depending how you want it, sorry, website. So website here gonna be website. All right, and then the name here gonna be website. So here we have it, website, phone, and company. So let's see the result. Let's refresh it, and now I think we're not keeping track of that as well. So we have the website, and here we also have the website, and then let's check if there's one, then display that. Okay, so for this DataGrid tool, we can pass in some props. So let's see why I don't have that values over there. Row data here, we have the website, everything. And okay, let's console log the row data and see what we have if everything is intact. Row data here, we have the, yeah, we have it, name, but why is it that oh sorry, it's a field name. Field, I guess you guys saw it. So the field might be this and this. Okay, so let's see, now it has appeared over there. Okay, so let's refresh this one, and now we have it. Okay, so let's pass in more props to it. The reason why you see this one's about the styling, so don't worry about that. We can take your time and then go to the documentation and see how it's been fixed. All right, so now we can pass in more props, so assuming that it's loading, we can provide loading prop here, and we see that loading, And then if you want to have the number of pages or checkbox to be able to select, so it's called checkbox selection. And now we can select some of these props, some of the properties here as that. All right, and then the next prop you can pass in is an auto hide to give it some based on the nature of your data. So auto hide automatically, we'll have that auto hide. Down we go. You see that when I add it, giving the auto hide, I have that nice display as that. And if you have records more than this one, you see that the pagination will be given to you automatically, and you can decide the page size, the number of pages you want to display, right? So let me say page size here, and now let me give it as page size of 1, and we save it. You see that we have one record on one page, right? So depending how you want it. And page number 2, we have all the record. We have 2 record here, and for each, if you want to display 10 items, let's say 5 here, and now for the 5 here, we can now navigate in as pagination. So you see how awesome the pagination have been given to us automatically. That is crazy. And we can give it some area control, the area label to tell you that this one is all about what? It's all about the name. So area label simply means that the name of this data grid, right? So area label, and you can say this, hey, this one is for student table. All right, students table, and that is it. So this one is for impaired users, right? So that's what we need about the data grid. And for the table too, it's really easy to implement, and I'll have one video for that one. So guys, thanks for watching.